Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to The Revolution, where I question everything. I'm Megan Connor, your host, and I am reviewing the Brian Walshe trial, and I'm on day 2. Now, I know I'm a little bit behind. I got started a little bit late on this, but I'm trying to do a little catch up, and I'm coming to this case cold. For those of you who know my channel, I love to do research. I love to deep dive, and usually when I bring a case, I give you the whole backstory and all of the sidebars and all of the everything that's happened before the trial starts. But this time, I started out with only just the very basic information. So if I had been called to a jury and they asked me, "Are you unbiased about this case?" I could honestly answer yes. And so I am reviewing only the parts of the trial that are available to the jury. I'm not reviewing any of the preliminary hearings or any of the motions in limine or any of the arguments about what evidence can or can't come in. And I know there's a lot in this case. And from what people have told me, I'm going to be shocked at some point. I'm already pretty shocked, but I know there's a lot that I don't know. Kiki, Cat Lady, Margaret Zabinski, good to see you guys. I know this is not my normal time, but as I said, I'm trying to catch up. Now, like any regular juror, I have a normal life outside of this. I have responsibilities and work outside of this, and I've got family stuff. I didn't sleep great last night, so I was a little groggy when I started reviewing this trial testimony today. But unlike the regular jurors, I can listen to it on 2x. And unlike the regular jurors, I can rewind if there's something I don't hear well. I can listen to it with the captioning. I'm taking copious notes, as I always do. And I get to take breaks when I want to. So there's a lot going on. I'm trying to get everything caught up so that I don't end up in a situation where I'm watching testimony from a couple of days ago and something major has already happened in the case. So I'm trying to get to the point by Monday where I can be watching it live like everybody else, except only the jury parts for me. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take notes just as if I was a juror. And when they go out to deliberate, I'm going to be deliberating too here live with you. So Logan Murphy, thanks for subscribing. Great to see you. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. This is a place for deep dives and questioning. It's also a place of kind, respectful chatting for 99% of the time. And so you are welcome to join us. Now, if you do want to talk with other people about the specifics and details of the case that the jury is not allowed to hear, please feel free to go over to my Patreon. I have a free chat over there. It's called Megan Connor's Trial Chat. You guys can talk it up over there, and I am not going to look at any of that until after the trial is over. So Logan Murphy, I bet your mom hears a lot of crazy stuff. I often wonder about the court reporters who have to just sit there and record everything without any expressions on their faces. I don't think I could do it, honestly. There were several moments in testimony yesterday and today when I had shocked look on my face, which I couldn't do if I were a juror. So you're going to get my real-time reaction as I'm receiving all this information for the first time. The only thing I knew about this case going in is that it is the case of a missing mom in Massachusetts, 39-year-old Ana Walshe. I realized I was saying her name incorrectly yesterday. My apologies. She is a mom of 3, and she went missing on New Year's Day in 2023. And that is pretty much all I knew about the case, except that I did hear about a violent incident that happened to Brian Walshe in prison, but just like the tiniest bit of info, and didn't know anything else about anything else going on. So, good to see you, E.T. Lizard. And Logan Murphy, I don't know how you keep a calm and cool and normal posture and not show your emotions, because for me, I, at the very least, you know, they've got that little thing they put over their mouths to dictate, and I at least would be going, so I don't know. The other thing is, of course, jurors are not allowed to talk with anyone about the case after they've gone home for the day. But I think if I ever got called as a juror, which I probably never would given my family's history, if I got called as a juror, I think I would have to go home and do like a vlog brain dump where I didn't share the vlog until after the case was over, because if I don't talk about things, they just sort of swirl around and ruminate in there. And even sometimes when I do talk about things they do, I had crazy dreams about redrum cases last night. Go figure. So anyway, ET Lizard, I'm really glad that you enjoyed my meltdown over on my other channel at Ex-Mormon Snark. That was a wild and crazy. We are reviewing the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives over there. If anybody's interested, feel free to go follow as well. All right, so let's get into this. Yesterday, source day one, we heard opening statements and we had not detective, can't remember his exact title because I think he moved up from detective to sergeant, I believe, Harrison Schmidt from the, I believe, Cohassett Police Department. And again, just like any other juror, I've got my notes, but, you know, I make mistakes and I miss things too. So if I miss something the jury heard, I would love for you to point it out to me here in the chat, or if you're watching on the replay in the comments. Replay people, I'm glad you're here. Good to see you. I'm not always going to be going live in the middle of the day while the trial is going on. So I'm hoping to be caught up so that my recaps will happen at the end of the trial day, starting on Monday. But as we left off last time, this was we were listening to a recording of the police interview, the second interview with Brian Walshe at his attorney's home, where it was his attorney, Brian, and the inspector, sergeant, and his partner. And so we continue with that recording for day two. So this is day two of testimony. And the first thing that we hear about is, when did Ana change plans at the last minute? She was supposed to go back to DC on the 4th. And Brian has been saying this whole time that she changed her plans to go back on the 1st instead. And Brian answers that he was just talking to Jen, Ana's friend, about this. He says, this is what I've been dealing with the last few months, indicating that he is actually upset about it. Not, as he testified before, it wasn't a big deal. This happens all the time. But the more he gets asked about it, the more of a big deal it is. And what he keeps coming back to over and over is the amount of time that they were able to spend together. Spending time together is a phrase that got repeated by Brian Walshe many, many times. So that was a big deal. Then Brian talks about Ana being upset by what happened with Bella. Apparently a former friend texted her something like, I can't be your friend. And then he goes off into a little bit of word salad where he's mumbly. And it reminded me of my dumb cousin's police interview where she was talking about the texts that Charles sent her. And she said, you know, just threatening me and whatever. Some of the things that Brian said reminded me of that too. It's like he's not being very specific about exactly what went on between Ana and her friend Bella. Ultimately, Ana said that she accepted Bella's perspective as leadership and understands what she's saying. This was going on about a half an hour before their New Year's Eve celebration. And the person apparently was in town, but not seeing. Bella was in town, but Ana was not seeing her enough. And this is a former coworker. And I guess the relationship wasn't turning out exactly what they thought it was going to be. Hey there, West Texas, Brat Kimber. Good to see you. All of these new, you know, the way YouTube has changed the names, I don't appreciate it very much. Let's see. Just trying to look at comments. Oh, you guys are talking about the other channel. Okay. Just want to make sure I don't miss any questions as they come up. I'm trying to do that during the live stream rather than at the end, so I don't end up going forever and ever. So then Brian talks about his oldest son being upstairs on the phone, or sorry, Ana being upstairs on the phone and his oldest son participating in their New Year's celebration. And then Ana sent a photo to her boyfriend, Fosco, at about 10 p.m. At this point, the police haven't really talked about an affair, and Brian hasn't let on that he knew that there was an affair going on. So that's going to happen at some point, I guess. Then Ana left her phone on the bedside and came back downstairs to participate in the New Year's celebration. He says Ana was disturbed by that text exchange and that she did bring it up. Then he said on New Year's Day, they were asking him, what were your plans on New Year's Day? Sorry, I'm going to have to switch because my AirPod just died because I've been listening to trial all morning long. Let me just make sure that we're still good. Okay, because I am going to play some of the trial video for you, and I want to make sure that I can hear it in the audio. Okay, then he said they didn't have a full-fledged plan. He did tell the nanny that they were going to do something, but he said that he was taken by surprise that Ana had to leave. And this was, I guess, the night before New Year's Eve. He was in the bathroom, and then she said she needed to go to sleep because she had to leave tomorrow morning. And Brian said he wasn't expecting that. And then the officer asked if they argued about that, and he said no, but they did argue about Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. He keeps bringing that up as the one thing that they argued about was Thanksgiving. Ana missing Thanksgiving because she was on a trip to see her mother with her boyfriend, and she was in Washington on Christmas Eve and either missed her flight or had to reschedule her flight and ended up driving back home Christmas Day. Apparently, this was a really big deal to Brian, but he's trying to make it seem like it wasn't. That's the impression that I get. Then he said it was something that they were working on, and he expected that in January and February that her schedule was going to be more regular and they wouldn't have these unexpected times where she was away from the family. Then there's this really weird dynamic going on about not being able to find Ana's phone or not knowing where Ana's phone is. And Brian mentioned in his first interview that there had been a time when the oldest child had thrown his own cell phone in the trash and they had to go digging through the trash to find it. So the officer at this point asks if the kids had taken the phone and hid it or something, how would she have gotten a ride to the airport? And he has to kind of, and Brian repeats the question, I think, as sort of a stall tactic to think of an answer. He said probably she would use my phone. I don't know. Maybe she would download the Uber app onto my phone and use it. And then the officer says, could she maybe have used the iPad? And Brian goes, oh, there you go. Then I want to play this little part for you because the officer asks, how did you get the phone? And I just want you to hear his response because it's a little suspicious that he just kind of mumbles through it and doesn't really know exactly what to say. And I do have time stamps here, but bear with me if they're not exactly accurate. And again, I always forget that I'm on 2x speed, back to normal. There we go. And I've got the closed captioning playing here for you so that you can hear, because sometimes it's hard to hear this audio as well.
She put the list on there. I guess she would download Uber and get it, but I know where my phone was, and we didn't have this phone at the time, so we were able to do the phones in the house.
She using the iPad potentially?
Oh. There you go. She probably would be able to use the iPad to do it. I would not, but she would know. The only thing I saw was one phone, one and her laptop. That other iPad that I'm telling you about should be at the museum. She did have a laptop with her, but she programmed all of these.
How did Thomas get his phone?
My mother bought it on I forget when we got the phone, because she had to get the phone and, or my mother had it and she was bringing it with the watch and everything. So it probably came here on she probably bought it on the second or something. Everything came on the second.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys caught that. I had to replay it a couple of times because it was very mumbly to me. I wasn't really able to understand exactly what he was saying, but he mumbled something about, I think my mom brought it with the watch, and so probably on the second. And so I'm sorry, as a juror, I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, we haven't really made this clear. I hope they clear this up in the questioning, but Are you telling me that your mom had Anna's cell phone? Did I get that right, you guys? And that mom brought the cell phone to Brian on the 2nd with her Hermes watch? I don't know if I'm correct about that or not, but I'm confused. As a juror, I'm confused, and I'm hoping that they clear it up for me in questioning. Then the sergeant asks if Brian had sent some emails from his laptop, and he confirms yes. He said that he sent a couple of emails to his partners and one to Anna. And then the sergeant says, I have to ask, would you ever hurt your wife? And he says, no, I would never do that. And then he asks, we all have arguments with our significant other. Is it possible that the argument escalated? And Brian says, no, we get along very well. This family doesn't work without her. That's the 2nd time he's said that. So he's staying consistent on that. But he seems really agitated as he goes on, and he says, never hurt my wife. Then he starts referring to her in the past tense. I loved her. So I want to play this part for you because I think this is important. I want to see if you hear what I hear. And they called this, in the O.J. Simpson case, they called this the missing eye. He said something to the effect of, didn't have anything to do with her death. Never said I, and I think that's something worth mentioning. And it's the same thing here. So he starts off by saying, but my wife and I were a very good team. So going from there.
Almost we agreed on, I have to get to DC, just didn't feel like we were the authors of our own lives. So that's why she wrote that on the thing, we have to be the authors of our own lives to make this happen, Brian. We're always working together.
In your mind, where do you think she is right now?
I like a lot of people have said maybe she's at a spa, and she was under a lot of pressure. Doesn't really.
I'm sorry, maybe she's at a spa. This is, sir, this is January 7th. Your wife has been missing for 6 days, and you think she's just at a spa and she hasn't communicated with her children. That is suspicious to me.
Track with my wife. She loved her job and she loved her family. So she would always be focused on that.
Did you hear that? Past tense. She loved her family.
Maybe the country house, like in Bella, in Serbia, but I have no idea. I can't. I'm having a hard time imagining.
Does she have any other identifications?
She's got a Serbian passport or Serbian international identification cards. One with Louis.
Okay, so I think I skipped the part where he said, "I would never hurt my wife." So I'm going to go back just a little bit because I got the timestamp wrong on that. I think I'm going to rewind just a little bit more. Okay.
But she programmed all of these.
So he's talking about she programmed all of the iPad, the cell phone, all of that kind of stuff. That's from the previous conversation.
Have you confiscated this one?
My mother bought it on the.
And this is the mumbly part we just listened to.
Because she had to get the phone and, or my mother had it and she was bringing it with the watch and everything. So it probably came here on the, she probably bought it on the 2nd or something. Everything came on the 2nd.
And yes, E.T. Lizard, that's his dog in the background in a crate. We saw pictures of the dog yesterday.
You didn't have your phone when you sent those emails. Was it emails?
Yeah.
Or were they for him?
So Zach and Daniel, my business partners at Let's, my wife and my mother.
How did you send those emails?
My laptop.
I asked you, did you do anything to hurt your wife?
No, I would never do that.
We don't have arguments with one another, spouses, etc. Has that ever escalated to a physical confrontation?
No, sir, no. My wife and I got along very, very well. Hey, the only stress we were having was going together. It's really, I bothered crazy about it for months. The family doesn't work without my wife. Never hurt my wife. I mean, I love her.
That was it. Never hurt my wife. And you notice when he asked, did you do something to hurt your wife? He said, no, I would never do that. He didn't say, no, I didn't do that. He said, no, I would never do that. And then starts coming to past tense. We got along great.
Her and
I loved her, past tense.
what would it think? I think about my kids too. She's a wonderful mother on top of being a wonderful wife. We could take that away from that. I mean, I just couldn't even imagine something like that. That's just not, we never do anything to hurt my wife.
And again, missing I. That's just not would never do anything to hurt my wife. Doesn't say I would never do. So just saying this is what I noticed as someone coming into this case, hearing this for the very first time. So that stuck out to me. And I also wrote that he was agitated at this point. It's like his character kind of changed. He talks about the Serbian passport and the ID cards with her former married name, said she was a language expert. She spoke perfect French and she has a friend there. And then the attorney asks, has the reservation, the airline reservation to Washington, D.C. on the 3rd been confirmed? And law enforcement said yes. And then I can't read my writing right here. Something about a reservation. Oh, the officer asked if they had brunch reservations on the 1st, like if they were planning to go to brunch or something like that. And he said, no, nothing like that. Again, every time they ask him a question, he talks and 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 talks. Reminds me a lot of Charlie Adelson. Just talks way too much, gives way too much information. Not necessary, dude. Be concise. Your wife has been missing for 6 days. What are you doing to find my wife? Where are you on the investigation? Like, these are the questions I would be asking. Then the attorney asks Brian, would she have gone to brunch without you, with a friend or something? And he says, no way. No, that wouldn't have happened. Time together, time together, time together. So important. Like, this is the 4th or 5th time he said this. Then the officers ask him if there's anybody else that he can think of that his wife is close to, or that his wife had arguments or disagreements with. Very curious about this. And so he gives a list of names. Admittedly, I didn't write this down because as a juror, I'm sure that if one of these names is important, it's going to come up in testimony later. So he names some family friends and then names some other people that she maybe had argued with. Then they start talking about the finances. They ask about the Chase Freedom card and the amounts that are on there. And they want him to turn over all of the information for the Chase Freedom card, which was Ana's card. And Brian is like, well, how much information would you like me to turn over? Whereas if I'm cooperating with the investigation, I'm going to say, yes, how much do you want? I'm happy to do it. And he's like, well, I don't know. The attorney steps in and says, well, yeah, we'll give you last month's statement. Okay. Then Brian mentions that there was a terrible conflict between Ana and her cousin over some land that Ana's family owns in Serbia, and that they have been arguing about it for about 15 years. Then they came to a deal, but 5 years later, they still haven't performed on that deal. And so then they're asking if there were any other conflicts or if she was upset with anyone else. And he says, no, my wife was wonderful. And people have been very concerned about her. They've all been reaching out, asking what's going on. And he says, I can't think of anything like that. So the question was, can you think of anyone who would harm your wife? And he says, I can't think of anything like that. I find that odd. I don't know. It's just a little bit of a blip it's in my notes. Then kind of gets pressed again about, can you think of someone who would hurt her? And he says, I wouldn't have a name. And then he says something about, oh yeah, so obviously we know at this point that Brian Walshe has pled guilty to fraud for trying to sell fake Warhol paintings, and this is where he owes or potentially owes the $400,000 in restitution. We find out in a little bit, or we found out yesterday, that what Brian's attorney was asking for sentencing in that case was to be sentenced to probation and to have to pay restitution. But what the state was asking for was 30 to 36 months in prison and $425,000 in restitution. So that's not a done deal yet because he hasn't been sentenced in that. But Brian does mention that there's an attorney in Los Angeles that is involved with a civil suit. But his attorney that's with him right now breaks in and says, the civil suit is not a threatening thing. I don't think there's anything involved with that has to do with this. And then Brian says there was a threatening Facebook text about 3 years ago, and he was concerned about that. But his attorney, Brian's attorney, seemed to dismiss it and say that wasn't related. Then the officer asks about a visitor that he had late last night, meaning the 6th of January. And Brian seemed to be annoyed and frustrated that this visitor stopped by. For some reason, brought one of Ana's mentors from about 10 years ago and said that was odd. And he tried to get rid of this person as quickly as he could. Then he goes on to say that this mentorship was a training program. They had a graduation. He kind of brags about this extra, diploma or certificate that he got from this mentorship training thing. And then he goes on to point out that it was, it wasn't accredited or anything like that. But this is kind of like his humble brag that he's been doing. Then he asks law enforcement if they found anything from the pool today. That's an odd question to ask. I was incorrect yesterday. I speculated that between the time law enforcement first came to the house on the 1st, the pool was full. That's what the sergeant testified to. And then the next time they came, it had been slightly drained. It was not Brian who drained the pool. It was law enforcement who drained it. They were trying to see if they could find anything in the pool, and they swept the pool and did not find anything. And so that is what he's referring to. There was nothing found in the pool. Now we move on to talk about this email that came in. This is something that the parties have stipulated to, that during the search, they got a tip that an email came in, and it was at 5:18 on the 7th. And the email essentially says, we have this so-called Ana Walshe here. She will never be back. We had a deal with her for $120,000. She messed up. Good luck finding us. And then a second email that said she isn't coming back. Thanks and good luck. But they found that the photo that was attached with the email was not a photo of Ana Walshe. It was a photo that was found at a website called iStock Photo. And the second one, I believe, was sent on the 27th of January, again, after Brian had been arrested. And it came from an email called richardwalker994@gmail.com. And the IP address came from Nigeria. And they want to make it clear that the state is not alleging that Brian Walshe sent those emails or had anything to do with it. Now, I will tell you, Nigeria is a country that is maybe obviously to some of you known for its fraudulent activities. They have a culture that is built around defrauding people. And it would not be without the scope of credulity to suggest that they watch the missing persons cases that come up in the United States. And if they know that it's somebody with money, they pretend to be holding that person for ransom and trying to defraud or scam people. But luckily, I think law enforcement knew that this was not a real thing. And so obviously nobody sent money to the Nigerians. Then we go back to The recording has ended, obviously. We talked about that email. Then they go back over the names of coworkers and friends that were mentioned. He reiterates that law enforcement was the one that drained the pool. He said that they were inundated with tips and, noted some other names that Ana had gone by, that Lubacek was her maiden name, and then Nippy, or Knippe, was her married name for her first marriage. And then he said the next thing they did in the investigation was on the 8th, which was the day after this conversation took place, that they received a search warrant, and they served that search warrant at 9 o'clock on the 8th. I believe I have that correct. Yes, that's correct. So they served a search warrant at 9 a.m. on the 8th. When they got there, it was Brian, the kids, and Brian's mom, Diana, and they all left with the attorney. Her last name is Minor, to go to her house in Scituate. And again, this is kind of just messing with my mind a little bit, because as all of these places are being mentioned, again, this is a place that I have visited. I had a relative that lived in Cohassett for years and years and years. And it's just weird to hear all of these familiar names of things that I haven't thought about in a very, very long time. Anyway, then we start talking about the financial records. They're admitted into evidence. And then we go to the third interview that takes place between law enforcement and Brian. In this third interview, I noted that he sounds very tired. They ask about his locations that day and the previous day, all the way back to the first. They ask him about the purchases and the payment methods. Now, this is never a good sign. If you're cooperating with police and they start asking your exact whereabouts, it means that they've got some information and they just want to see if you're going to lie or not, in my opinion, allegedly. He said that he went on a visit to his mom's from about 6:30 to 7 on the morning of the 1st, and then back to Cohassett around 10 a.m. He went to CVS and Whole Foods. I think the Whole Foods is a lie, because I don't think he went to Whole Foods. I could be wrong about that. And then on the 2nd, he said the only place that he went was to the Shake Shack, I believe, is what was said. Now, we already know some of this is not true if the prosecution's opening statement is accurate. And also, the defense's opening statement confirmed that he did tell a story and he did lie about some things. So that's where we're at with that one. Then they go on to the electronics that were found during the search of the house, which, by the way, Kiki, I love Shake Shack also, and I will leave a tip for those of you who ever frequent the Denver airport. The Shake Shack in the Denver airport has a chocolate bourbon milkshake that is absolutely incredible. And I try to get up there anytime I'm going through Denver. I wish they would, send me a little honorarium for that plug, or at least a gift card for a free milkshake. There I go, plugging stuff for free. Hey, Smooty Tootie, good to see you. He does call her my wife a lot. So they found a lot of electronics on this search of the house. And they start bringing in a little bit of the search history on this, but it's nothing like we're going to get to here in just a minute. On the 1st of January at 6:30 a.m., the search on the mini iPad, excuse me, was the 10 best ways to dispose of a body. And the mini iPad was one that the oldest son frequently used, but they said, at that time, he would have been asleep in his room with the iPad. And then they say that there are dozens of searches that took place on that iPad. So we are going to go through the search history in just a minute, as well as I'm going to have it clipped out on my channel, because it's crazy. If you just only listen to that, you're like, what in the heck was going on with this dude? So then on the 8th of January, this same day, after the search warrant was served in the morning, Brian Walshe was arrested at his attorney's home in Scituate at 4 p.m., and he was taken to the Cohassett Police Department. Then they go through a series of photographs where they show some of the evidence. So I want to show this to you. So West Texas, Brat Kimber, the oldest son is, I believe, 6 years old. I believe the sons are 6, 4, and 2, if I'm correct about that, which is kind of heartbreaking that they've brought him into this several times already. I just don't like that at all. I said that in my recap yesterday, and I'm not going to like it if something comes in that's, Anyway, at some point in this recording, it starts showing me backwards times rather than forward times. So I'm not sure if I'm going to have timestamps correct on this, guys. I apologize. Give me just a second to try and scroll through and find here because okay, there we go. So this is a picture of a cut on Brian's thumb. That picture was taken the day that he was arrested. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute this and play it on 2x because I think we're going to kick through these pictures pretty quickly here. And I'll just kind of describe them as we go. So that's another angle of the cut on his thumb. And also I'm going to just note his hands look pretty dirty. I don't know what they're dirty with, but there's the cut on the thumb. And then it looks like there's something kind of, you know, staining his skin possibly. I'm not going to make any assumptions about that because I think we'll have someone testify about that later. I'm trying again to just keep an open mind. It could be anything at this point. Oops, sorry guys. I forget sometimes. So there's the cut on his thumb. And they showed 2 angles of it. So I'll show you the first angle since I wasn't sharing the first time. There's the first angle of that cut. Pretty deep. Not beginning to really heal or scab yet. So could be fresh. But again, I'm keeping an open mind. I have no idea how old that cut is. I can't speculate because it's not in evidence yet. Then they talk about the dumpsters in Peabody that were near his mother's apartment. And they talk about some of the evidence that they found in there. They're talking about taking that evidence to a processing center where they would dump it out and then sort through it. And now I'll show you some pictures from what they found there. So this is plastic sheeting. You can see the detective's feet in the picture up here. But this plastic sheeting was found inside that dumpster. And then the next picture is just the items as they were found when they were poured out onto the ground. And in a minute, they're going to sort through those for us and show us exactly what they were. And this is what they looked at when they then sorted through. So you can see the 2 boots here, the matching boots. And those were Hunter brand boots, which are the boots that Brian Walshe reported that his wife, Ana, owned, Hunter boots, and that she was wearing those when she left. Okay, then the next thing that we see is they're going to zoom in on this picture to show us some of the things that were found in the dumpster. And this white piece of paper they're zooming in on is a COVID vaccination card that belonged to Ana Walshe. So that's definitely something, in my opinion, that would have been carried in her purse or on her person. I had one in my purse for a very long time because I went on a trip where it was required. And so I just kept it in my purse because I was like, who knows if I'm going to need this again at some point. And so that I'm kind of speculating that may be the reason that this card was found with Ana's belongings. The next thing that they talk about is the financial records. And so they just went over the fact that there were 2 statements. one from Apple Credit Union and one from the JetBlue card that had no account activity after December 31st of 22. There was an automatic rent payment that came out of Ana's account. And then on the Chase credit card, there was zero due when they reviewed these records at the end of 2022. Then they looked at her Chase credit card statement, and on October 30th, there was an airline ticket purchase that, my earring fell out, a trip that was going to be taken on November 22nd through the 27th. And we know that's the trip that she took with her boyfriend to visit her mom in Serbia. And she was gone during Thanksgiving, and that was a point of contention. Then they showed that the balance on that card, I believe, was $2,690. Then they showed a statement from Liberty Bank where the only charges after December 31st were recurring charges. Then they showed two statements of a 401k, one Fidelity account in Ana's name, an IRA that had $93,600 in it, and another Fidelity account that had $117,000 in it. So I'm assuming that they're bringing that in to show that she had significant cash assets, cash-ish assets. Okay. Then there's another stipulation that comes in. They stipulate at this point that on January, I think I have that. I think it's April 1st. I wrote January 1st, but I remember thinking April Fools. April 1st of 2021, that Brian Walshe pled guilty to wire fraud, transportation, interstate transportation to commit fraud, and unlawful monetary transaction. Excuse me. And again, this is where his attorney is asking for probation and restitution. The state is asking for 30 to 37 months in prison and $475,000 of restitution. Then we go to cross-examination for this first witness, the sergeant from Cohassett Police Department. The defense attorney says that Brian Walshe made no withdrawals and there were no records, the financial records were not in Brian Walsh's possession. That was correct. He did admit that the fraud with the fake Warhols was all his fault. The ransom notes came in after Brian Walsh's arrest. And then they talked about the recording on the 7th at the attorney's where Brian Walshe looked and sounded sad at the questions about his son and the iPad mini. And then they talked a little bit about the fact that these searches were synced to the iPad, but not conducted on the iPad. And so they were trying to allege that it was not Brian who was on the iPad. Then the defense attorney brings up the cuts on the hands. We don't know when those occurred. That's true. Then he talks a little bit about the hole in the ceiling, and he talks about the fact that the insulation and the plastic in the ceiling were intact, so they didn't really know what was going on there. They talked about the plastic in the Volvo. They talked about Brian being present when they searched the Volvo and that he didn't object or prevent them from looking in the car, and that the plastic in the Volvo, I think the defense attorney was trying to allege that the plastic in the Volvo could have come from the hole in the ceiling. We didn't really know where that plastic came from. Again, I'm like, I don't know, as a fake juror over here, I don't know where that plastic came from, and I'm not jumping to any conclusions because nobody has testified as to what was on the plastic or anything like that, other than the police officer saying that there was a little maple seed on it. That's all. That's all we know right now. That's all I know right now. You guys know a lot more than I do, probably. Then they talked about the bags in the basement. They found some trash bags in the basement. The officer pushed on it with his foot and kind of assumed that they were carpet samples. Brian Walshe was there for this and did not prevent him from seeing the bags or anything like that. The defense attorney felt it important to point out that the stairs down to the basement were made of wood and that there was a crack on the bottom step. And as, you know, a fake juror, in my mind, when the defense attorney brings up the fact that there's a crack on the bottom step, I'm going, okay, so are you trying to say that he couldn't have dragged a body down there because the step was cracked, and if he tried to do that, then it would have broken? This is what my mind is doing while this defense attorney is asking these kinds of questions. What is he getting at? That's what I'm asking myself. Then the defense attorney notes that there was nothing in the pool, and there was no search about blood in the pool, nothing in the search history about asking about blood in the pool. I was a little confused about that. I didn't quite get it. But again, I'm not going to catch every single thing, as no juror is. Then they talked about the canine search that was done outside the fence in the backyard. So beyond the fenced area of the home in the wooded area, and the canine returned nothing, no results. The officers did 2 walkthroughs and had no suspicion for what they found. Now, they might have had suspicions that they discussed outside of the presence of, Brian Walshe and everybody else, but nothing that they found. And then they did investigations on the property on the 8th and 9th and turned up nothing, although there were a lot of electronics, and we'll get to that here in just a second. And then there's a little conversation back and forth about the difference between iMessage, which is the iPhone texting app, and iMessenger, which I think is what Brian used to refer to Facebook Messenger. Instead of saying Facebook Messenger, he said iMessenger, whatever. But the attorney points out that Brian never saw a message between Ana and her boyfriend, Vasco. There were no messages. And so the sergeant said, that's correct. There were no Facebook messages that he saw. Then then he said, wouldn't he have asked about an affair, or wouldn't an affair have been brought up if he thought that there was an affair going on between the two of them? I mean, that's kind of speculative. We don't know. And then he talks about warning Brian, that the sergeant warning Brian that people will be suspicious of him and won't believe him. If you're the husband and somebody's missing, then they're going to have a hard time believing you. I'm not really sure why he brought that up, because in my mind as a fake juror, I'm going, yeah, if you're the husband, that's generally who people are going to look at when somebody goes missing. It's a pretty normal thing. And I don't see any problem with the sergeant warning him that that's going to be the case, or I don't know. That was weird. I didn't get it. Then we have Nicholas Gerlini, who was the trooper, the state trooper, I believe. And hey, Trace, on the case, I keep forgetting to say hi to you, but I'm just saying, hey, drive safely. Don't look at chat. We're fine. So then the trooper testifies about all the electronics they found. They showed pictures of all these, but you guys probably don't need to see them. There was an iPhone 13 mini, an iPad 6 mini, 3 MacBooks, an iPhone SE that was charging in the main bedroom, a 9th generation iPad in one of the kids' cribs, and the iPad in the kids' room that had a damaged screen. So that is, by my count, 1, 2, 3 iPads, 2 iPhones, and 3 MacBooks. Lots and lots of electronics. Then they had a discussion about the Apple ID and how that works, how you can be logged into your Apple ID on multiple devices, and they will all sync together if you have that setting. Then they talked about Safari being the default browser for Apple products. And then he talks about extracting the data on the 10th of January from Brian's MacBook. And then they had a discussion about search terms versus search history. So search terms is a separate thing. Search history are the sites that you actually visited. And right now we are going to go through all of the search history. These are websites that were visited. And there are 2 things I want to point out about this. Number 1, it's going to be graphic. So here's your warning. Number 2 is that some of these searches had less than a minute between them. So it was almost like he was clicking on the site, skimming it, and moving on to the next search result or something like that. these searches seem to be in very quick succession a lot of times, a little bit unhinged, off the deep end, and also, you know, I don't know. I guess I'll give you my opinion after we talk about all the search history. But here we go. Are you ready? You're not ready. I promise you, you're not ready. But here we go anyway. All right. So we're going to start on January 1st. And then we're going to go back and look at some of the other search terms, because that's the way they presented it in court on the second day, which was Tuesday of this week. I realize I'm doing this on a Thursday. I'm a couple days behind, but I'm going to catch up. So January 1st, 4:52 a.m., how to dispose of a body. And then within just a few, these are just within a few minutes of each other, so I'm not going to specify the time for each one. But the second search, the second website visited, how long until a body starts to smell? Next, how long from missing to inheritance? That was a Yahoo search. Then 45 minutes later, how to dispose of a body again. Then how long to be missing to be dead. Then a search for somebody named Tishman Spire, which normally I would go do a deep dive on that, but I am not doing that because I'm a juror, and I've been told not to do any research on this case, and I've stayed away from social media posts about this case or videos about this case, haven't watched anything. Then at 7:48 a.m., a search for Lowe's. Then at 9:33, how long does DNA last? Then a redirect to how to clean DNA off of a knife. There for 60 seconds, and then identification on partial remains, 9:35. How to dispose of a cell phone, 9:59. Also 9:59, how to dispose of a computer. Then at 10:22, can I still use my missing wife's credit card? Then wife missing, what should I do? Then spouse missing and want a divorce. Then best way, this is at 11:28, best way to dispose of body parts after murder. Then 6 ways to dispose of body parts, murder, from a true crime channel. Then Patrick Kearney. And there was a comment made about that. There was an objection, which the judge sustained. So like a good little juror, I crossed out that information, but we'll come back to it. Then at 11:41, cleaning up a dead body on YouTube. Then how to clean blood from a wood floor. Then can I use bleach to clean blood from a wood floor? Then what does bleach do to a dead body? Then if you want to get away with murder, use this special detergent. That was at 12:19 p.m. Then is it better to throw away crime scene clothes or wash them? Then how to use hydrogen peroxide on blood stains. Then how to clean blood stains with hydrogen peroxide. Then should I use hydrogen peroxide 8 on blood stains on concrete? Then can the FBI tell when you access your phone? Then can the dishwasher clean blood? That's at 1:52 p.m. Then is it possible for a knife to still be contaminated with HIV after being run through the dishwasher? Then on the 2nd of January, that all ended at 1:57 p.m. on the 1st. Then on the 2nd of January at 2 a.m., how to remove a SIM card from an iPhone. Then applesupport.com, how to switch or remove a SIM card. Then how to remove a hard drive from a laptop. Then at 5:24 a.m., TJ Maxx near me. Then at 10:23 a.m., how long do stores keep security footage? Then at 12:27 p.m., how to saw a body. Then how to dismember a body. Then is hacksaw the best tool to dismember a body? Then details of dismemberment in court trial. Then can you be charged with murder without a body? Then at 12:47, murder conviction with no body. Then No Corpse, No Problem from a true crime channel. Then Can You ID a Body with Broken Teeth? Then How to Dispose of Body Parts in the Trash at 1:14 p.m. Then, a couple of searches for apartment buildings or rentals at specific locations. Then at 1:28, what part of Massachusetts smells the best? Then at 7:09 p.m., big gap there, can you mix white vinegar to stop smells? So that ends the searches on the 2nd. Then on the 3rd at 1:55 a.m., can baking soda make a dead body smell good? Then at 5:06 a.m., cleaning up blood without a trace. Then at 6:55 a.m., are footprints easy to wash away? Then at 12:35 p.m., how long until a dismembered corpse starts to decompose? Then at 1 p.m., body found at trash station. Then how long does it take a body to decompose in a plastic bag? Then at 7:30 p.m., can police access your search history without your computer? Then on the 4th of January at 6:55 a.m., does your cell phone track your historical location data? Then they skip to the 7th, and there is a login on the Chase Bank website at 3:58 p.m. on the 7th. Now, then for some reason they decide to go back because those were the wild unhinged searches, and the rest of these searches, I don't know, I still think they're pretty wild, but I guess we're going back. So on the 1st at 3:49 a.m., there was an accounts.google login. And at 3:50, that was still logged in to the Google, I guess, Gmail account. Excuse me. And so I'm questioning, why didn't they include that at the beginning? Because they should have said he was logged in on the 1st when he made that first search of how to dispose of a body at 4:52 a.m. But anyway, I'm smart, so I put 2 and 2 together. I don't know. Then we go back to the 27th of December, which is, I think, the day that the prosecution in the opening statement, that's the day that they allege that Brian found out about the affair between his wife and this guy named Fasco. So on the 27th the 27th of December, 2022 at 12:06 a.m., we're going to have a conversation now here about cornography, the study of corn, if you catch my drift, because I don't want to get, shadow banned by this platform. There is a hub, if you will, where you can look up things about cornography. It might be called Corn Hub. And the search that was clicked on is called Cheating Wife Seduces Another Man to Impregnate Her. Then the next site that's visited is Chat with Miss B Live. And that's also on the same hub where they discuss cornography. And that search happens at 12:08. So that first one, 12:06, 2 minutes later, the next search. And then we skip to the 27th, that same day, although that was in the middle of the night. Now we're at 8:33 p.m. Best divorce strategies for men. Best date to divorce for men. 5 best and worst dates to get a divorce. What? Like, what do you mean the actual date? Washington, D.C. divorce laws. And then they talk about the fact that exhibits 891 through 934, so if I'm doing my math correctly, that's about 43 exhibits or 43 searches. The next 43 searches are all showing things about divorce, divorce advice, divorce mistakes, verbal abuse, using verbal abuse in a divorce, 10 worst mistakes in a divorce, things like that, followed by, and again, these searches, the first one was at 8:33 p.m. And then there were like 45 or so searches that took place between 8:33 and 8:57 p.m. So it's like just click, 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 just like over and over. And then a Chase credit card login at 8:57 p.m. Then on December 31st at 6:53 p.m., a search for free play poker or visiting a website, free play poker. Then we go to lunch, and after lunch, the prosecutor is able to bring in who Kearney was just by asking the question a different way. In his investigation, the trooper found out that Patrick Kearney was referred to as the trash bag killer, somebody who killed people and then put their dismembered bodies in trash bags. So that was part of that search history. Then they correct the date on the extraction. Then they have a discussion about the gray key, which if you followed the Lori Valadabel trial in Arizona, there was a lot of discussion about this gray key. So there's the Cellbrite extraction that comes out. It is downloaded in a format that is encrypted and unreadable unless you have the gray key. So there was a little discussion about that. Then they talk about the iPad mini that was given to the officers on the 7th of January by Brian with the password. And they were able to see that the origination of the searches that had appeared on the iPad actually originated in the MacBook, and the MacBook synced to the iPad. Then they went through the time period of this iPhone 13 mini. They showed that it was on the 1st of January, that it was unlocked at 7:57 a.m. and then relocked at 8:02. It was plugged in, and then 11:23 it was unlocked again and then relocked. 12:38 it was unlocked again and then relocked. 12:45 unlocked again and then relocked, and then at 1:42 unplugged, and then on the 2nd at 2:25 p.m. it was unlocked again. Then they talked about the bags, some of the other evidence that they took from the medical examiner to the crime lab to be investigated, and they had 7 bags containing rug material. There was also metal, tissue, and hair that was taken to be examined. And then cross-examination, and we're almost done. We're wrapping it up here, you guys. So the defense attorney asks the trooper, is it possible that there might have been more pertinent information that was important to know that occurred before December 25th? The warrant that they had was only from December 25th of 22 on. And so he said he didn't go back and look at anything else. And the defense attorney basically said, you didn't think that you had that there was any information that might have been important. How do you know? He didn't Google any of these things or divorce or any of that stuff before the 25th. And he said, I didn't have probable cause for that. Then we're going to have a little more discussion about this pornography issue. The attorney asks, did you see the search that was titled, or the website that was titled Slade Dominant Scarlet Straps? And the trooper said he wasn't asked about that. And basically, they went back and forth about this idea that the cheating wife search was highlighted just because it seemed important to the investigation. There was an actor in that video named Scarlet something. And then the next search, I guess, was this one with the scarlet straps. And they were trying to say, like, you didn't think they were correlated or whatever. In my opinion, this was a lame attempt by the defense attorney to try and impeach the integrity of the investigation of these searches because they're cherry picking. That was kind of the idea that I got. But again, you know, they're only going to present the evidence that's relevant to the case. They did point out that website, the one with the cheating wife, was viewed for 7 minutes. Then there was this really funny part where the defense attorney said, so you're aware that when you go to the Pornography Hub website, we'll just call it PH for short, Hub. He says, so you're aware that when you go to the PH site, you're presented with a variety of different options, right? And the trooper said, I don't know. I'm not a user of that site, so I couldn't tell you. Defense attorney gave himself away. I chuckled. I thought it was funny. Anyway, then they had a little more discussion about why they saw the cheating wife thing and that one was included and nothing else was included. Then the defense attorney pointed out that you can't tell us anything about the activity that was going on while that iPhone was unlocked, when we went through the lock, unlock. And he said, yes, I can't tell you that. Maybe somebody else can testify to that. Then they talked about, let's see, you didn't find any texts between, oh wait, sorry, I skipped. Texts between Brian Walshe and Ana. He said, were there any texts between Brian and Ana on December 25th through December 27th? And he's trying to reference these divorce searches. And the trooper says he did not find any texts between Brian and Ana for those dates. And then the attorney asks, did you find any documents in the search history or anything else about protecting assets? And this is what was alleged in the opening statement, is that Brian's reactions to all of this was about protecting assets. Still haven't been able to make that connection yet, but I'm sure he's going to tell us what he means. And then basically talked about, no, there weren't any searches about protecting assets. And then on the Chase searches, the days that the times that the Chase website was visited, the trooper can't see what that person was looking at on that website or what they might have been researching or what part of the account was going on or what they were doing. And that's true. He said he couldn't tell what they were looking at. Then the defense attorney tried this wild tactic where he said, okay, so that first search, how to dispose of a body, you don't know what he was looking at in those, in what was on the web page. And there might have been advice to take the body to a cemetery. Or really? Really? Because, and this is where I was going to tell you, like, this is, I'll give you my opinion now, okay? My unvarnished opinion after listening to the search history here. If it's me, you don't, if your loved one suddenly dies in the middle of the night, which is just what was alleged in the opening statements, that he went to go wash the dishes, came back an hour later, and Ana was unresponsive, and he nudged her and she rolled out of bed. Rolling my eyes on that one. But if that's really what happened, I'm not going to search, how do I dispose of a body? I would search something like, my wife suddenly died. What do I do? Or how do I take care of my wife's body? Or what should I do with my wife's body? Or something like that. I would not just search dispose of. Anyway, that's just me personally. But the trooper says that he didn't have a probable cause to look at any of the searches prior to December 25th. We talked about that already. And then the defense attorney says, did you realize that the defendant also searched William Tesla? Nope, didn't know that because it's really not relevant to the case. Then he says there were 3,677 records extracted. How many of those were relevant? And he said, well, I can't say exactly. I would be guessing at this point, but a good portion, he said, oh, you can't give us a number. So out of those 3,677, we don't know how many you cherry picked or how many were relevant to the investigation. In my estimation, that is not enough to give me a reasonable doubt that they only took the things that were relevant and they're ignoring everything else. And again, if the defense has something in the search history that would exonerate their client, I'm looking forward to hearing that. But in my estimation, again, this is what, we should do if somebody passes away. You should call 911 right away. I think my wife might be dead. I'm scared. I'm worried. I'm upset, whatever. So anyway, at the end of the second day, I am still unbiased from the standpoint that I am willing to accept new information coming my way. I am still looking for anything that would possibly be that would give me a reasonable doubt about this case, because so far, listening to the opening statements and listening to the testimony of these two witnesses, listening to Brian's own words after his wife's disappearance, and listening to the evidence that's been found so far, as well as the search history, it's not looking good. It's not looking good for Mr. Walshe. However, again, as a juror, you have to, and I'm a fake juror, you have to wait to hear all of the evidence and then consider everything together. So that's what I'm doing. I'm curious to know what your opinions are so far. Please let me know in the chat or in the comments. I will be back probably later today to recap day 3 because I'm trying to get caught up. And again, I've got other stuff going on. So I really want to be watching this live on Monday and to be able to do a midday and a final day recap. So I am interested to hear your comments and your contributions. If I missed anything, in my time as a juror where I was a little sleepy this morning and my notes were a little scribbly, I would love to know. But if there's stuff that's going on outside of the jury's presence, I don't want to know until after the trial is over. And I think Kirsten and I, my friend Kirsten, who we have another channel called Ex-Mormon Snark, I think Kirsten has been following this case very closely. She and I may do a live where after I give my version of the verdict, she's going to spill all the tea that I haven't heard yet and get my live reaction. So I hope you will join me. I hope you'll continue to join me every single day for the recap. Kiki, thanks for being here. I think it's going to be super fun. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope to see you guys every day for the recap, and we will do it live. And I will probably have another recap for you later today. That's what I'm shooting for. So thanks for being here. Please leave your comments below. Please subscribe if you're not already. And I will talk to you again very soon. Take care of yourselves.